So hi guys, welcome back to Med. Today I have Anirudh with us. I think many of you might have already seen because we did an interview with Anirudh regarding MTech versus MS. So today Anirudh is working in the data science field, and I think this interview would be really interesting because there is a lot of boom about this particular field and how to switch or how to get into that. So let's hear out from Anirudh because he switched from a core mechanical domain to the data science field. So Anirudh, I think everyone kind of have your background through that video, and I will also paste that link of that video in the comment section for the viewers. Let's start from the question itself. Explain about what exactly data science is.
So these days, data science has become a very complex field because there's just so many roles involved, and there's so many things in the entire life cycle of data that you need to handle. Like for example, you have data engineers that work on preparing data all the way from ingestion to make it ready for data scientists to use. Then you've got data scientists who are trying to build models to bring value out of this data for business, right? You have business analysts that build visualizations, do statistical analysis on this data. You've got machine learning engineers that help basically build not just build good models, but then build the entire pipeline, bring these models to production, build monitoring pipelines, etc. So it's quite a complex field at this point, and depending on the company, the team, the role in which you are, you may be expected to have different skill sets to handle data. Right, so there's no simple answer to it. But then these days, you've got the skills you need to have are you need to be good at core fundamental modeling, right? You need to be good at good software engineering skills. You need to be good with handling data at scale. So it's a bunch of skills that come together to be a data scientist these days.
Now the question comes: why data science? Why this field is so much booming today, and why there is so much of shift that is happening in this particular field?
Yeah, I mean, so there are many reasons. So one thing is like if you it's a relatively new field, right? It's maybe like it's a decade since people are really using the value of data science. Of course, the core math or the core research itself has existed for decades at this point, but the real applicability has come only in the last decade or so, and that's primarily because of a couple of reasons. So one is we're able to store large amounts of data today in ways that are actually usable, right? So that's one big reason. And the other is, given that this data is stored and given that there's talent in the field, people are then able to find use cases where they can get value from this data, right? So things that were maybe done by humans before, you can build models now to do it, or things that couldn't be done before. We have methods to utilize this data to do it these days, right? So basically, the amount of data available and the fact that we can now store this data has allowed data science to boom up to this point.
Okay, understood. Now comes this question, like, right, you switched from the core mechanical background to the data science role. So what is the best possible route you would suggest? Obviously, this might differ from person to person, but still, if someone from mechanical background is trying to switch to data science, what is the route that you would suggest based on your experience?
Sure. So, like you said, it's going to be a personal journey for everybody, right? It's going to be a different story for everyone. But one thing I think will be the general common theme. That's probably the best ways. One, of course, you need to have a good mathematical background. In my case, I had a master's in mechanical engineering. Plus, my research was in control systems, where I done like I worked on optimal controls. So I had like a very good background in optimizations and core maths, which is the fundamentals of machine learning and data science, right? So that's good to have. And I think most mechanical engineers do have enough mathematical background to at least learn the fundamentals of what's required for data science, right? The second aspect to it is how do you switch into a role like this, right? So there are two general routes you can take that I think. One is you join some online course, you complete it, you use the certifications and knowledge to start looking for a job. That's one way to do it. That I think is the most saturated way to do it because literally everybody is doing it, right? And it's probably the hardest route to crack, right? Because everybody is doing it. Like everybody has a certification in machine learning these days. Everybody has some online courses they've done. They've done some 5 or 6 projects, and they all have a GitHub profile saying they've done 5 or 6 projects. So it's very hard to crack. Right? There's so much competition. The other way to do it, I think, is if you're already working in mechanical engineering at a company, right? you can identify use cases within your team where machine learning could be useful, right?
Mhm.
So work on it, develop it, pitch it to your manager.
Correct.
Whether or not it really gets any attention and it moves forward for business, right? At least you've done something in your team in a real world job that is
Mhm.
in machine learning, and that is valuable in your resume.
Correct.
Compared to saying that I did some personal project on identifying cats and dogs, whatever. Like I'm
Correct.
just making up things, but something like that, right? So it's valuable to actually do something in a real business and try to deliver value rather than that you learn a lot more rather than doing some ready-made project that can be done on a course, right? So that's the path that I would suggest for people to take.
Understood. Understood. So I think a good point. So right now we see a lot of online platforms. Everyone is going having certifications. So like when you also, for example, see a candidate, frankly speaking, does that certification, for example, his background, his work experience is not on data science, but he has a certificate, versus a guy who does not have any certificate, but he has kind of done a project within his company, a short bit of project, maybe 2 months or 3 months. So how the company sees the values between these two, does those certificates really matter? And being in that industry, how do you see a frank opinion?
Yeah, I personally, based on even I've done some interviews, like I've attended some interviews, like, right, whatever. So I don't think there's too much value to certificates. That's my
Mhm.
personal opinion.
Mhm.
I think these days skill is valued more than anything else.
Mhm.
If you have skill, that's what they hire for, right?
Correct.
Now there is a difference. So if you're trying to join a bigger company, it's not just skill. You need to have something on your resume. Realistically,
Correct.
we see posts on LinkedIn ki matlab no, मतलब bad resume Google join कर लिया, but ये rare होता है. It's not normal, right?
Correct.
Generally speaking, you should have a good resume to break into bigger companies, right?
Correct.
But startups, it all comes down to skill.
Correct.
So regardless of whether you've done some certification, as long as you have the skill set, and in fact, I would personally think that if you've done a project at your company rather than a course, the
Mhm.
resume is more valuable, is my feeling,
Understood.
right? So then use that, and then as long as you have the skills, you will get into a startup.
Correct. So another question comes now. If someone would like to switch from any other domain to data science domain, will a startup route would be a good thing versus a established company which is working? Maybe, for example, you started with a startup versus, for example, someone directly wants to go into Walmart and do these things. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah. So I personally think it's just easier to start with startups. It's just because they need talent, and bigger companies have talent. I mean, not that they have talent; they need talent, but they have more options to pick from,
Correct.
right? Compared to say startup. So when you're in the initial process of learning and you want to get in it, there are two things, right? One, you want to learn like crazy, right? The other side of it is you are still new to the field relatively,
Correct.
right? So startup means it's just a good environment where as long as you have the skill sets they need, they will take you. And second, you will get the opportunity to learn like crazy in the period that you're at the startup, right?
Correct.
Uh, so I think the startup option is the best route, and after that, once you gain some experience, you can, if you're interested, you can always move on to a bigger company.
Correct. And again, a subjective question. People attach this transition with timeline, like how much time it might take for me to go to that role, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Now, I know
Yeah,
you did it pretty fast, but
yeah.
again, if someone is starting from a startup role, what is the good amount of time? Plus, what skills at least he should have so that he can transition very, very quickly. So, any timelines you would like to associate to that?
So I think the easiest route to take in that case is having domain knowledge in which the startup is working on. Right.
Correct.
So if for example, let's say you are working in after treatment systems or something like whatever you're working on electric vehicles, right? So try to find a startup that is doing machine learning related to electric vehicles,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
So that way, you're already interesting to them because you have domain knowledge, which is very important, which is the hardest thing I think to find in machine learning, right?
Correct.
Among data scientists, right?
Correct.
Uh, then you need to pick up skills that are typically expected in this field. That is, one is being able to handle large data. So it's getting detail, maybe like things like PySpark, Hadoop, just to handle large amounts of data. Then, of course, core machine learning, some fundamental statistics, the math behind it, core machine learning, and then maybe some visualization tools, one visualization tool that you might need to pick up. But these are skills that generally will take about uh, 8 months to a year to pick up at a decent level, I personally feel. But
Mhm.
I don't think you necessarily need to wait that long to start looking for a job, because ऐसे नहीं है कि मतलब only if I know everything can I go work on a job, right? You can learn
Correct.
while you're doing it. So I would
Correct.
say, like, once you have some fundamentals, right, a decent software engineering skills, decent machine learning algorithms, basics of PySpark, you can be you a simple project at least, right? I would just start looking, and you have good domain knowledge, right? I would just start looking for jobs and startups in that field, and
Correct.
if if you can, like, join them and learn on the job. That's what I suggest.
Correct. No, thanks for sharing there. So I think that's all that I wanted to kind of discuss, and hopefully this might be helpful for people who are looking forward to this transition. So yeah, thanks again for joining, Anirudh.